All right, let me start with this. Every human person, no matter how vulnerable or helpless, no matter how young or old, no matter how healthy, handicapped, or sick, no matter how useful or productive for society, is a being of inestimable worth, created in the image and likeness of God. This is the dignity of America, the reason she exists, the condition for her survival. Yes, the ultimate test of her greatness, to respect every human person, especially the weakest and most defenseless ones, those as yet unborn. Anybody know who said that? Blessed Pope John Paul II. And I got that from my daughter, who we're blessed that goes to Pope John Paul II, which is one of the 4 Catholic high schools in the Diocese of Arlington. So I got that from her, and it is an amazing quote, and I'll continue to use that. So there's moments in our lives that help us define the rest of our existence because of their profound impact. And my daughter Corinne Catherine's birthday, which is on December 17th, 2011, it's one of those moments. So I'd like to share a few thoughts and tell you some of my experiences as the father of Corinne. And she had a poor prenatal diagnosis. And so my hope and intent is to help you understand more fully the beauty and sanctity of life from the perspective of a dad with a sick child that was in her mother's womb, and that my witness will better help you understand and address the needs and the concerns of the babies, the women, and the families that you come across that may or may not reach out to somebody for help during a very difficult time. And so I think I've met most of you, but my name is Richard Stryker, and I'm married to Paula. I'm the father of 4 wonderful children. My oldest is Sean, he's 19, Sydney, 17, Cameron, 14, and Corinne, who's in heaven. So Corinne was born, as I said, on December 17th, 2011, and she spent about 90 grace-filled moments with her family before she rejoined her Heavenly Father. And so over these last 2+ years, I've often been asked to share some thoughts, ideas, and dare I say wisdom regarding my journey from a dad's or the male perspective, since so much emphasis is placed on the mom. And by the way, I think that's rightfully so. So as a general rule of thumb, whenever possible, I like to keep things very simple, and I think that applies especially to being the dad of a sick baby in the womb. And you can't get much simpler than the character of Forrest Gump, played by actor Tom Hanks. So during one exchange with his girlfriend Jenny, if you've seen the movie, Forrest asked Jenny, or Jenny says to Forrest, "Do you ever dream, Forrest, about who you're going to be?" Forrest replies, "Who I'm going to be?" Jenny replies, "Yeah." Forrest replies, aren't I going to be me?" And so my simple advice to dads is to just be you. Be the father that you envisioned you would be before you found out your baby was sick. Be yourself and be open to and accept God's invitation. As men, we're often portrayed to be, in the light of our Neanderthal ancestors, as hunters and gatherers. And some think that when we're faced with a difficult circumstance, a primordial instinct kicks in where we have to hunt more deer and gather more nuts and berries when dealing with difficult news. Now, I was born in the city of Philadelphia. I mean, in the city, not one of these people who lived in the suburbs and said that they lived in the city. It was a row house. So growing up in the city of Philadelphia, the only thing that I learned to hunt were sales and bargains at the department stores and grocery stores. So I would advise fathers, don't worry about gathering enough nuts, because you're going to come across plenty of them in your journey, and your baskets will overflow. So many perceive our central role to be a protector of the family. And again, it doesn't change whether your child is born or still in the womb. Your perspective on parenting will hopefully change for the positive. You can still parent and protect your baby by being their most steadfast advocate, You can stand up for their rights when others may want to treat your child as a disease and not a precious baby. So instead of crawling into an emotional cocoon, which is tempting at times, you can prepare for the best case scenario, the worst case scenario, and everywhere in between. And so I would urge dads not to let yourself be slow walked through that door where only the worst case scenarios are discussed. I'm not trying to promote the idea of false hope, but you cannot forget that with God all things are possible, not guaranteed as we want or perceive them to be. However, there's a tendency in our academic and scientific arenas to forget this, to think that we've achieved some sort of superior intelligence which is on par with or greater than the Almighty. Other advice that I would offer is to simply be there for your wife. Turn off that TV and computer. Go to all doctor appointments with your wife. I don't care what you have going on at home or at work. Go to all doctor appointments. And just listen and comfort her whenever needed. You don't have to come up with magic words. You don't have to say, where was that last place I left my Superman cape? Just being there is the best medicine. God gives everyone many opportunities throughout the day to get closer to Him, and many of these opportunities are never realized or they're suppressed because, after all, there's thousands of reasons why we don't act on God's invitations. Well, trust me, this invitation is hard to ignore. God doesn't give you a sick baby to punish you in any way, shape, or form, and that's important to understand. He simply asks you to be the best dad that you can be to one of His children who just happens to be sick in their human form. The baby's soul is perfect and will be reunited with God when their mission on earth is complete. You simply need to be an advocate for your sick baby and allow their mission to unfold. So as a dad, you should know that your willingness to accept God's plan and be a positive witness to it will propagate waves of positive energy and love throughout the world. And I say that from firsthand experience. This type of energy isn't confined by the laws of physics. The spiritual energy created through loving your sick baby and therefore witnessing God's love. It will increase in magnitude and be more impactful as time marches on. The law of the conservation of energy doesn't apply here, which says that energy can either be created or destroyed. Spiritual energy is created by our souls responding to an opportunity presented by God to be a beacon of His love. So these tiny and frail babies can be more impactful in a positive way to those whose lives they will touch than many of us who will live to be old enough to collect Social Security and beyond. I used the word witness just a few moments ago, and that's a big part of what I do for a living. I've talked to a few people here about what I do, but I examine evidence, I write forensic reports of my finding, and I provide expert witness testimony in court regarding the construction and functionality of an improvised explosive device, or an IED, or a homemade bomb. I've served in the Navy as an explosive ordnance disposal officer, and I've worked for the FBI as a special agent for the past 17 years, the last 11 of which have been in the FBI laboratory in Quantico. Now, it took over 2 years to become qualified as an expert in hazardous devices and forensic exploitation after an intensive training program. And I've often entered the witness stand during some high-profile cases, having previously been told by the lead prosecutor, "You're the star witness. You're the cleanup hitter." There's no pressure there when they tell you that, right? Well, I've had no such formal training to prepare me to take on one of the most important witness assignments of my life. I wasn't given 2 years to get qualified. But the amazing thing is that you don't need specialized training to be a witness for God. As St. Francis said, preach the gospel at all times, and when necessary, use words. I hope that you'll be able to see and understand as I continue to speak that my heart, which has been tempered by the redemptive power of suffering. So what I have to say is no less true than things that can withstand the scrutiny of a stiff cross-examination in a court of law. And so I view my mission to be a star witness for God, and I'll stay on that witness stand until he asks me to step down and rejoin him. So, kind of recount our story. It was March of 2011. I was sitting at the kitchen table, reading the newspaper. Paula comes downstairs, looks very nervous, a bit shaky. She held out the pregnancy test pen, and then I stared at the prominent plus sign. She said, "I'm pregnant." Now, we've always been open to life and having more children, but after, at that time, 11 years since our youngest was born, and with both of us being in our 40s, I won't say how old you were then. Get the decade right, though, right? We thought our chances were about as good as hitting the Mega Million lottery, which I still play a little bit, by the way. Well, we really did hit the lottery, so to speak. God decided to give us the blessing of another child when the odds were against us, and even when society is mostly against such a thing from happening. So my children were ecstatic, as were Paula and I. My youngest, Cameron, was especially excited, really looking forward to being a big sister. So at the 20-week ultrasound, which is the common time to get your first ultrasound, we were all excited. All the children came with us to the appointment, and we were going to make it a special day. We were going to go out afterwards to dinner, go shopping, buy some baby clothes, some baby items, make it a big special day. Now, we were leaning heavily towards finding out the sex of the baby, but we decided to wait till the moment when the ultrasound tech asked us. And we knew that if it was a boy, we'd name him Colin, and if it was a girl, we'd name her Corinne. So the technician did her job very well. She was professional, very pleasant and talkative, and we couldn't sense at all that anything was wrong with our baby. So at that moment, she asked us, and she told us that it was a baby girl. The kids were happy, although at the time, Paul and I sensed a little bit that my son, Sean, was a little disappointed from not getting that elusive brother, but he was okay. So when the technician finished talking, all the required measurements and pictures were taken. She said she was going to get the radiologist, come discuss the results with us. Again, we didn't sense that anything was wrong. We sent the kids out to the waiting room, and when the radiologist came in, he didn't waste any time telling us that our baby was very sick. He said that based on the formation of her brain, she had holoprosencephaly, a lobar, a hypoplastic left heart, and a facial deformity. And I'm only able to state those words after considerable time processing it. Because on that day, it sounded like the radiologist said, "Your daughter has supercalifragilisticexpialidocious." I had no idea what he said or what it meant. He continued to say that those conditions are all indicative of trisomy 13, which is a lethal condition. So perhaps not knowing our position on the sanctity of life, he immediately started to go down that road of intimating that the best position to take with such a diagnosis would be termination, and that it would be okay. That we wouldn't be wrong, and again, it would be okay. So we didn't really let him get much past that, really out of first gear, before we made him realize that that wasn't an option for us. So here we are, Paula and I are in an interior waiting room. Our heads are spinning, crying, worried about our baby. So many questions. Is she's going to die? She's not going to make it? How can this be? And we felt numb. Now again, as I mentioned, I'm trained to disarm bombs, forensically examine the results of that. Well, I just felt like at that moment I'd cut the wrong wire, because I felt like I was literally in the middle of an explosion, heat ball, debris raining around me. So keep that as a reference. So here we are at that critical moment when a family receives a devastating diagnosis for their child. A mother or a family that wants the baby, who's excited about the arrival of the baby, but just received news that their baby is very sick, that their baby may not make it to term, and if they do, may be stillborn or only live moments beyond birth. Now, I don't have any ill feelings toward the radiologist who probably only knew of or was trained in or believed in one option as being the best for all his patients in these circumstances, because clearly he had been there before. We weren't the first ones that he had seen. So I believe that what he was trying was that what he believed was the best. But his best had severe limitations, which he was either unaware of or he just chose to ignore or dismiss. So my purpose here today, especially with this audience, isn't really to engage in a debate of whether a mother has the right to choose the fate of her child while in the womb, the quintessential pro-life, pro-choice arguments. But remember, this is a scenario where the mother's already chose life. I'll talk a little bit about choices, the kind of choices that are the most important we can ever make. And again, I understand how passionate both sides get regarding the right of a woman to choose. However, consider this. If one believes in choice, if one is passionate about the legal right of a woman to choose the fate of her baby in her womb, then you must concern yourself with helping that woman or family with making the best decision. It doesn't take a scholarly physician or the proverbial rocket scientist to realize that the best position to be in when making any kind of decision, particularly a critical one, is to have all pertinent information available. If you only present one option, is it really a choice? If you use euphemisms, which are the substitution of an agreeable or inoffensive expression that may offend or suggest something unpleasant, are you really communicating the truth? The gravity of those questions becomes even greater, even heavier, when that single option is presented by a doctor, a nurse, a healer, an authority figure, a friend, a person who, after all, is supposed to have your health and your baby's health as their prime directive. The popular Encyclopedia of Christian Counseling by Dr. Tim Clinton, Dr. Ron Dawkins of the American Academy of Christian Counselors quotes this: 95% of women who are faced with severe fetal deformities and who are offered perinatal hospice choose this form of support as more humane and emotionally desirable. And that comes from a Ring, Cassidy, and Gentles study of 2002. So obviously there is another choice. I know that you all know it, and I pray and hope that you can communicate it well to